angels are one of those things where God doesn't necessarily have any commands to us about angels, but the passages about angels occur hundreds of times. The challenge for all of us, and I'm preaching to myself, is every so often I stand back and I realize I'm too worldly. I'm too much into I get into my job and I get really focused on it, and we just had, my wife and I just had a talk about how I kind of dig down deep, and then at times I'm only thinking about things of this world a lot. And I really think that's really not the intent of, and it's not really helpful to me spiritually to stay that way. I realize that I do much better if I can keep my thoughts on things above. Even when it comes to like our discipling groups and relationships, that's one of the things that I feel like in the past at times we used to call them prayer partners. And nowadays we're very much more where the times we have together are about giving and taking advice. And I really think there's much more power available if we would pray instead. And that's probably my subheading here, is that when you study angels, I think what it really brings out, so I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, here's the spoiler alert, is that I think when you really look at the activity of angels in the Bible, but also in our lives now, that it should motivate us to pray more, because there's a lot of power available. Let's start off in Hebrews 12. I think this is probably one of the greatest unseen realm scriptures there are. Hebrews 12, starting in verse 22. But you have come to Mount Zion, to the heavenly Jerusalem, the city of the living God. You have come to thousands upon thousands of angels in joyful assembly, to the church of the firstborn, whose names are written in heaven. You have come to the God, the judge of all men, to the spirits of righteous men made perfect, to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. Now, it's an interesting passage, but I think what he's describing is maybe what we've called the kingdom in the past. It's God's family, really, I think is what he's talking about. And there's portions of it that are here in this world, the church of the firstborn, that's us, whose names are written in heaven. But then it talks about angels, and thousands upon thousands of angels in joyful assembly. They're part of the church, too. They're part of God's family, and it's a part we don't tend to think about very much, but they're clearly there. Christ, Jesus, is a part of it too, and again, those are the parts that are unseen. So I think, again, the worldly part of us, we come to church and we think, okay, this is just church, this is just our other people, and that's all we think about is the other people. But I think this passage brings out that really angels are even a part of church. They're a part of all of it. How many of you guys have watched this series that's out there, Stranger Things? Anybody watched it? And, the interesting thing about Stranger Things is, at the end of season 1, you realize that there's a whole parallel universe in it, and they call it the Upside Down. One of the things that happens, one of the main characters makes a breakthrough out of our world into a parallel world where the houses and everything are there, but everything's very dark. I think the world of angels is just the opposite, where this is probably the dark side, and that is the light side, that heaven. I think that's actually a good way to think about it, that there's like a parallel universe of the spiritual things that we can't see. That's why we can't see it. And Joseph, in an earlier one, mentioned the Matrix, that Morpheus gave Neo the pills and then he said, welcome to the real world. He said the Matrix was a veil over our eyes that kept us from seeing reality. And I really think, again, that's the issue with angels and God's activity and Jesus and all the things, that they're very active in this world, but if we are so focused on things here, we don't see it. And I think here's the point. Even as we study angels, I don't want you to get confused about that. This isn't really about angels. It's really, the central figure here is always God. He's the one who cares for us, and angels are just servants and an extension of his love for us. They're just ones who execute it. And in many ways, we're meant to be the same thing in this world. When we reach out to people, it's funny, I was talking today to a homeless guy, and I feel like, I finally kind of related my role there, that here, I'm part of the grace of God trying to be expressed to this person. And whenever we reach out to a lost person, we're like that. We're trying to be the extension of the grace of God and the love of God to the people around us. And that's what angels are. And they're doing that for us too. And 1 Peter chapter 3 says, for the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their prayer. But the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. God is the one we should fear and worship and trust, not angels. Colossians chapter 2, where it says, you got to watch out how you handle the knowledge of angels. It says, do not let anyone who delights in false humility and the worship of angels disqualify you for the prize. Such a person goes into great detail about what he has seen, and his unspiritual mind puffs him up with idle notions. So we're not here to worship angels. That's probably the other side of it, is they're servants like us. And whenever one of the Bible characters ran into one, like they, at various points, I believe it was Daniel, bowed down to him, and the angel said, no, don't do that. And he had him stand up. So we're not talking about them to worship to them, but I think, or to develop idle notions or be puffed up. The idea of this, again, is to understand that there's great power that's beyond the powers of this world.
Amen.
That's really what a study of angels is about. So again, in Hebrews chapter 1, verse 13. And did God ever say to an angel, as he does to his son, sit here beside me in honor until I crush all your enemies beneath your feet? No, for angels are only spirit messengers sent out to help and care for those who are to receive his salvation. Jesus is the Son of God. He's far above angels. Okay? But angels have a role. And in many ways, they're kind of like brothers to us. We're not, Jesus is above us too, in the ranking of God. So angels have a ministry. Luke chapter 20. So again, my first question was, who are angels? I think one of the things when you see movies about angels, there are a lot of false teachings about them that come out in Hollywood. So one of them is, I think, that when you die, you become an angel. That's one of them. It talks about you get your wings. I was just watching this one movie about Dolly Parton. She died, and it was going to be so how she could get out of purgatory is, she was given some wings. She was going down to try to help someone. If she helped enough, that then she could actually get into heaven. But in the meantime, she's going to be an angel. Well, that's really not. That's not really good doctrine. That's not what the Bible talks about. So here's the one passage I think that kind of compares dead people with angels. Luke 20, verse 34. Jesus replied, the people of this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy of taking part in that age and in the resurrection from the dead will neither marry nor be given in marriage. And they can no longer die, for they are like the angels. They are God's children, since they are children of the resurrection. So one day that'll be us. It's saying we will be like the angels, but we won't be angels. Okay? Angels are different. They're people, they are a kind of people that created specially for the role that they have by God. Now here's another one. So who can see angels? And that's an interesting one too. Numbers chapter 22. Here's a really great account of a man named Balaam who was a prophet. But unfortunately, Balaam at this point in his life was really messing up. He was actually fighting against the people of Israel. Numbers 22:21. Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab. But God was very angry when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. So the problem is Balaam here was trying to side with the Moabites against the Israelites. Okay, that was the problem. God got really mad at him for doing that. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road, okay, Balaam doesn't see him, but the donkey does. Interesting. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand, she turned off the road to the field. And Balaam beat her to get her back onto the road. And that actually happened 3 different times. Finally, he sees it too, basically. Verse 31 of chapter 22. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. So he bowed down and fell face down. So here's a case where the angel is invisible. Make sense?
Yeah.
But it's interesting that the animal could see it. I wonder if that's the case today too, even that animals can see angels more clearly. And there's another one here, Hebrews 13, verse 1. Keep on loving each other as brothers. Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by so doing, some people have entertained angels without knowing it. So clearly, they can also appear like people. And so it's funny, I told my granddaughter about that when she was about 6, and she got really excited about it. So we were sitting in a restaurant, and she said, I want to go and ask every person in this restaurant if they're an angel really. And I go, no, hold on. Angels have a purpose, and they're kind of undercover. You got to let them do their job. Don't break their cover. Okay, don't blow their cover. And really, I think in many ways they're like that. They're kind of secret agents on God's missions around us, and you never really know. So we say, hey, some people could walk up and they're even in need, and it could just be an angel that needs a meal. That needs, he's actually more in human form, or she. Could be a he or a she. Does that make sense? So, you think about it again. Sometimes they look like people, sometimes they're invisible. Two books that are fictional that I really recommend are This Present Darkness and Piercing the Darkness by an author named Frank Peretti. I've actually read all his fiction stories, and so again, I feel like the theology lines up pretty well with the Bible that he's got there, but to me it helps understand just how there's like this whole activity going on behind the scenes that we can't see. And I think to me that helps me realize that, okay, because maybe I'm having a conflict with somebody, usually it's way more is going on than just that, the things you can see. There's so much more going on in the background. Angels are much more aware of kind of long-term implication of things, and many things are going on. Frank Peretti, in his books, he really brings that out. It's really good. So here's another question. My question 3. How powerful are angels? There's an account in 2 Kings I just want to hit here. It's a time when Jerusalem was surrounded by an invincible army of the Assyrians, and one angel had an impact right there. 2 Kings 19:35, and it says, "That night the angel of the Lord, one angel, went out and put to death 185,000 men in the Assyrian camp. When the people got up the next morning, there were all the dead bodies." I mean, I don't know, have you seen that passage before? Yeah. Think about that for a minute. I mean, I was just checking. The Dallas Cowboys Stadium, that's actually twice the capacity of the Dallas Cowboys Stadium that angel killed in one night. I did a little study, and who's more powerful, an angel or the atom bomb? The Hiroshima bomb, it turns out on the first day, it killed 45,000 people, and eventually it went to, say, 100, and some of the highest estimates are 145. One angel in one day killed 185. Wow. More powerful than an atom bomb, and it's not like he was done. I think he could have kept going from that point, whereas the atom bomb, once you drop it, it's over, So, again, how powerful are angels? More powerful than the atom bomb. I think, again, we live in a society right now where we're so in awe of military power, military might. But I think to this day, one angel, okay, how many angels are there? I mean, it said that passage we read back in Hebrews said there are thousands upon thousands of angels in joyful assembly. So if one angel can kill 185,000 people, what can thousands upon thousands of angels in joyful assembly? So what's the implication for us? I think when you realize, again, these are just the servants of God, I think what I realize is I shouldn't be as fearful as I am. Does anybody struggle with fear like me? Yeah. I mean, there's times, even preparing for this lesson, I get fearful. Okay, you guys are all my friends, and why do I get worried about that? But it's just something about it. But if I can get myself, what I realize is if I get myself more focused on spiritual things, it helps me not be afraid. Especially I realize the power of God is so much greater. Daniel in Daniel 9, he's got this account where they came to him because Daniel set his mind to pray morning, noon, and night. When I had read that and really focused on that, I'm trying to do that in my life right now, is make sure I pray 3 times a day. Doesn't mean I need to spend an hour each time. Because, I think one of the things that the Bible talks about prayers is don't babble on. Don't bore your angel who's listening to your prayers. Lay out the issues, do it briefly, and move on. I think, again, but I think the idea of Daniel being someone that the angels responded to, that angels really are responsive to prayer, I think is a big deal. We should call on that more, again. Here's another one, Matthew 18, verse 10. "See that you do not look down on one of these little ones, for I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven." So what are they doing with their face of the Father of heaven? They're bringing the needs and the issues of our children even in front of God. Isn't that cool? Yeah. So I think even again, the idea is that these little babies that we see that seem so helpless, in fact, have great power. Because they can move God. And really that is the power that we have as well. Does that make you feel like you want to pray more?
Amen.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Let me read your passage, Daniel 9, verse 21. "While I was still in prayer, Gabriel, the man I had seen in the earlier vision, came to me in swift flight about the time of the evening sacrifice. He instructed me and said to me, 'Daniel, I have now come to give you insight and understanding. As soon as you began to pray, an answer was given, which I have come to tell you, for you are highly esteemed. Therefore consider the message and understand the vision.'" So here's a huge note. If we can make God our friend, and we will ask Him with faith in our prayers, these angels can take care of it. They basically come quickly and answer to the prayers of the saints, I think is the truth. So again, prayer. How powerful is prayer? Well, how powerful are the angels that take our prayers to God? Very powerful. So I think, again, that's the whole point. I mean, so again, we're not to worship angels, but on the other hand, they're meant to help answer our prayers. And I think that's super cool.
Yeah.
That just really fires me up. So I think we need to open our eyes again to the spiritual world. We aren't ever really alone. And here's a great passage about opening our eyes. 2 Kings 6, verse 15. When the servant of the man of God got up and went out early in the morning, an army and horses and chariots had surrounded the city. "Oh, my lord, what shall we do?" the servant asked. "Don't be afraid," the prophet answered. "Those who are with us are more than those who are with them." Okay, the servant of God looks around and goes, "I don't see anybody but the enemy." Okay? You ever feel like that? You ever look around and go, "I don't see anything but opposition." But then Elisha prayed, "O Lord, open his eyes so that he may see." Then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked and saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. So what were those? Angels. Okay? They're great warriors. So angels protect. Have you ever had an angel moment? You know, I was doing some thinking again. I've been talking to my granddaughter a bit about angels, and she's always fired up about that topic. But, I got thinking back, and I realized that there's probably 2 times in my life that I remember, I really feel like actually an angel intervened in my situation. The first one was probably about 3 years before I studied the Bible and became a Christian. I was driving down from Michigan to Oklahoma, through Oklahoma to Houston, because I had a job I was starting in January. And it was icy out. It was freezing rain. I was coming up to a bridge. It was kind of bumper-to-bumper traffic. It was moving about 40 miles an hour. So I was in the left lane and next to a semi-tractor trailer truck, and something was talking to me, said, "Pull back, pull back, pull back, pull back." So I kind of pumped my brake and backed up and let the truck go up front. And sure enough, as soon as the truck got to the bridge, it jackknifed. This thing just kind of slid on the ice, jackknifed, went over and jammed against one abutment of this 2-lane direction of the highway, and the other part of the truck hit the other. It basically covered the whole highway. And then it did it right in front of me, and then I'm kind of trying to pump my brake, and my car's heading underneath the trailer of the thing. I just managed to stop right before my bumper went underneath the trailer. I would have taken the top off my car if I hadn't been able to stop, but afterwards I was like, my heart's beating. But I feel like someone spoke to me, and that could have taken my head off. It could have killed me, and if I had been next to him where I was, before that voice spoke to me, he would have smashed me against the abutment. And I thought, wow. This guy wouldn't have been born. He wouldn't have been married to her. You think about all the things in the future that flow out of not getting killed in a car crash one day. So I really, as I pondered, I go, I think an angel intervened. I really think that's what happened. And that's what angels do. That's their deal. They intervene and serve those who will inherit salvation. Isn't that cool?
Yes.
So I think you got to think about that. There's things going on, and those that are with us are more powerful than those that are against us. Here's the thing. Just because we have that doesn't necessarily mean we're always protected. And I think you have to understand that we all do. There's going to come a time when we all will die. And I don't care how many angels you have, nothing's going to stop that. So who decides when our time is up? God decides. And that's not me. That's not you. We don't have that choice. God decides when it is. Let's read this passage. This is really about James and Peter, the apostles. Acts 12, verse 1. It was about this time that King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church, intending to persecute them. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with the sword. When he saw that this pleased the Jews, he proceeded to seize Peter also. This happened during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. After arresting him, he put him in prison, handing him over to be guarded by 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring him out for public trial after the Passover. So Peter was kept in prison, but the church was earnestly praying to God for him. That night before Herod was to bring him out to trial, Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains, and sentries stood guard at the entrance. Suddenly an angel of the Lord appeared, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him up. "Quick, get up," he said. And the chains fell off Peter's wrists. Then the angel said to him, "Put on your clothes and sandals." And Peter did so. "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me," the angel told him. Peter followed him out of the prison, but he had no idea that what the angel was doing was really happening. He thought he was seeing a vision. They passed the first and second guards and came to the iron gate leading to the city. It opened for them all by itself, and they went through it. When they had walked the length of one street, suddenly the angel left him. Then Peter came to himself and said, "Now I know without a doubt that the Lord sent his angel and rescued me from Herod's clutches and from everything the Jewish people were anticipating." Now, is that cool? So it's cool for Peter, okay? People were praying for him. The angel took care of a situation. I don't care how many guards Herod was going to put around him. He got out. And the angel could just put them all to sleep and open any gate. There's no locks that can hold them. Bottom line, there's nothing that could stand in the way of an angel. So why is it that Peter gets saved, but James was put to death with the sword? So I think here, sometimes we measure the work of God in our lives by how it impacts us. And we think, somehow if God answers my prayers, then I'm more spiritual. But what about James? Is he just unspiritual? Why is it that happened with him? And I think it's just, we have to allow God to choose. It was just James's time. I think he's got purposes for each of us. Again, our view of these things so often is very worldly. And I think you have to be willing to take even times when you don't get your prayers answered. That doesn't mean you shouldn't pray. I think we should pray either way. But sometimes praying for God's will may not be that all the physical things we want to happen that are good will happen. But I think that's an awesome story about how an angel intervened. Let me just close with one final passage here. And I think, again, this is probably the biggest challenge of us is kind of what's the challenge for us to really be in God's camp on this. Revelation chapter 12, verse 11. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. So I think, God expects us not to be fearful. To be honest, I struggle a lot with my anxiety and my fear, but I realize that I shouldn't, and I'm praying a lot to overcome that. But I think, with angels in the picture and with God moving, the good news is I think he still protects us, but sometimes protecting righteous people is to let them go to heaven. And I think we got to be willing to do that. He said, not to love our lives so much as to shrink from death and be fearful. I think we got to be willing to be bold and own this place because we have these great servants watching over us. Amen?